Yo guys, hello. As you can see, I've sorted out my room, got rid of shelves, made some space. I've got some new lighting, and a new camera. So some of these videos will probably look a little bit better for you. Also sorted out some filters on the vocal here, so you'll get less background noise as well on the recording, which is nice. Right. Terminology. I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while because it's one of the things that bugs the hell out of me. I feel like whichever method people are talking about, whether it's CVT, whether it's Tamplin, whether it's SLS, whether it's singing success, whether it's per Bristow, whoever it is, or whatever set of terminology and methodology people are talking about, people tend to get really latched onto it and see it as the only way, or this is the true way, this is the scientific way, this is I can put up XYZ study to prove what I'm telling you. To me, a lot of that stuff is chat and chirping. All I'm really concerned about is results. Has this person got the results that they want? Has this person got the results that I want? Because if they have, then you should probably listen to what they're saying. And if they don't, they can throw all the terminology and mumbo jumbo at you that they want. But as far as I'm concerned, they don't know what they're talking about, no matter how many studies they pull up. If they don't have the results that I want, if they don't have the results that I'm looking for, then I disregard what they're saying, no matter how much authority they say it with, no matter how much science is backing it up. Listen, none of the great singers knew anything about any of that stuff. They didn't know anything about terminology, about the different kinds of ways of explaining what they're doing. They just mimicked other artists, copied other artists, made the same sounds, and learned how to do it. And that's it. Now, in terms of my methodology, all I'm really concerned about is blowing air, part 1. Part 2, coordinating the vocal cords in an efficient way. Part 3, shaping the sound with the articulation muscles. That's it. In terms of what I am thinking about, what I am working on when I sing, it's just those 3 parts. Anything else to me is clutter. It's all just silliness, a good example is Robert Lunte, absolutely bogged down in terminology and all sorts of just craziness that just overcomplicates things hugely. CVT is very similar. One of the reasons I've never latched onto it is because, I was just looking through the website here. Yes, it might be backed by science or whatever you want to say, but the reality is I'm listening to these different vocal modes: neutral, curbing, overdrive, edge, and the examples are basically just different levels of chord closure. Whoopie-doo, Why on earth do you need 4 different terms for basically the same thing? It's just overcomplicating things makes it seem way more, what happens is people end up separating these. They think there's 4 different vocal modes, and that, do you really think that natural singers are thinking, right, now I'm in my edge coordination? No, they don't. All they're thinking is, boom, grab onto those chords, squeeze them more, let go more. That's it. It's a gradual, just grey area. There is no 4 vocal modes. There's just different levels of squeeze on the muscles. Basically, I've got a shopping bag. I've got one can in it. I've got 2 cans in it. I've got 3 cans in it. 4 cans. Yeah, that's all it is. You're just gradually adding weight. You're gradually adding tension in the right muscles. That's the way I think of it anyway. You'll feel free to counter my argument, but you won't be able to, because that's all that's happening in here is muscles are working, and they are working more or less or not at all, and that's it. You're combining that with some airflow, and you're able to isolate everything and keep it all coordinated in a independent way. Yeah, like I go on about. What bothers me about all the teachers out there and all the coaches is I'm talking about all this stuff that is seriously groundbreaking, really. And in the next year, as I get better and better results, people are going to wake up a little bit to this. No other coaches are talking about this the way I do. The best coaches out there, some of them do talk about things the way I do. They aren't able to often explain things in as much detail. Perhaps that's because their product's behind a paywall. Perhaps they're just not able to explain it in as well as I am. But I was thinking the other day, concepts I've come up with that just don't exist anywhere else. For example, I was talking the other day about a broad vowel palette. You know, it's just a simple idea, really, that some singers are basically in they have a smaller palette of vowels to draw from, and so they are more restricted in terms of the type of sounds they can make. But it's not one of my better examples, really. A lot of concepts I think I talk about, like separation of muscle groups, for example. You know, show me another coach that's talking about separating the articulation muscles from the vocal cord, the muscles that coordinate in the vocal cords. Show me one, because there isn't any. They're not talking about isolation of the right muscles. They're not talking about independence between the various muscle groups. They're not talking about separation between muscle groups and keeping everything very compartmentalized in the mind. Now, all that stuff is science, granted, but I'm telling you exactly what's happening. I'm not bogging you down with, right, this is my curbing coordination, this is my this, that, the other. All I'm saying is, right, basically muscles are working, they have to work in isolation. You have to have separation between the different things that are going on. The mind has to have a very clear idea and understanding of what's happening, of how it's separate, of how it interacts and combines to create great singing. That is the fundamentals of technique, no matter what methodology, what terminology you're using. I guess I'm just tired of a lot of this kind of battle between terminology and different approaches and stuff, because most if not all of the different methods out there have various issues when it comes down to the types of terminology they use and how accurate it is in relation to the best singers out there. I'll tell you this is the truth, guys, and I want you to remember this, because at some point you'll realize this if you get to an advanced stage in what you're doing. Whatever method you're studying, at one point or another, you're going to get to a stage where either you're going to hold on to that terminology and you're going to grab onto it with your life and you're never going to let go. And you're going to be then trapped in that methodology. You're going to believe that it's accurate. Or at some point you're going to let go of it and you're going to go out into no man's land, where all that terminology of all the different methods starts to completely fall apart and everything becomes basically one unified thing. There's no separation between, oh, this is my edge coordination, this is my everything just becomes so blurry at that point that the terminology just breaks down. What I'm trying to say is that terminology can only take you so far, methodology can only take you so far. At some point you have to abandon it completely. That is what I'm trying to get across. At some point, no matter what method you're following, no matter how attached you are to it, if you want to become a master singer, if you want to become one of the best singers out there, at some point you have to utterly abandon it and you have to go out into no man's land and you have to discover it for yourself. Outside of all of these preconceived ideas, all these studies, all this science, you have to go out there and feel it for yourself and really understand it for yourself. If you're brave enough to do that, you actually get better results than if you are latched on to science, if you're latched onto methodology, if you're latched onto different terminology. And I see it all the time. Teachers and singers, they're attached to some terminology and they've compartmentalized their voice using that terminology. And they then start to believe that the voice is genuinely separated into these different compartments. And because of that, they become trapped in it. They can't get out of it. And because they can't get out of it, it reinforces the fact that they're right. But what they don't realize is it's actually what makes it feel like that's correct is the terminology having them in a straitjacket, basically. If they actually broke away from it and tried some different things, tried some different approaches, tried out some ideas of their own, tried to figure it out on their own without being so attached to this terminology, they would actually find that it starts to break down. I've had many discussions with coaches over emails and things where I've tried to get across to them that the reason it feels that way is because you're attached to the terminology. It's not that way. If you become better at what you're doing, it ain't that way. Unfortunately, most of them won't believe me. So they stay attached to the terminology, they stay attached to that their certain way, and they never really get any better. Out of all the coaches out there, I've improved the most over the last 4 or 5 years than anyone. And I'll tell you, I look at Ken Tamplin. His voice is exactly the same as it was 5 years ago. Robert Lunte, exactly the same. Most of the coaches out there, their voice does not change. A lot of the ones I respect, Mark Baxter, his voice is the same as it was 5 years ago. There's some great coaches out there that I will criticize, or I'll say, yep, great coach. Some of the great coaches out there, they're not improving. You go back to videos I put out 3-4 years ago, they were much worse. And the videos I'm going to put out in a few months' time, the videos I'm putting out now are much better than they were. Videos I'm going to put out in a few months' time are going to be much better. Because I know exactly what the end result is. And it ain't none of these methods, it ain't none of this terminology, that's all bollocks. There's something beyond this, guys. There's something like purer. Yeah? Think of Eva Cassidy, think of Sarah Bareilles, think of Jeff Buckley, think of Matt Corby. All those singers go beyond the terminology, beyond the methodology, into basically vocal no man's land. Yeah? Point is, there's actually very few coaches, if any coaches out there, that have really got to the point that a lot of these naturals get to. Now, some of these naturals have some discrepancies, some issues with their voice. Some of them end up having problems, but a lot of them at some point have gone beyond what they were told, i.e. when they were young and learned to sing, they were learning via intuition, feel, out in no man's land, learning for themselves, not in this ABC, look at all these studies, all this science backing up my terminology and my method and everything we're doing is correct. They weren't in that frame of mind at all. They were out in no man's land, making a lot of mistakes, allowing it to go wrong, and basically out adventuring out in the hills, out in the mountains. It can be a lonely place to be, especially as you get older, but that is how it's done. If you watch this video and you got this far, congratulations, because you're one of the people that might make it, but there ain't going to be many of you, and that's the truth of it. Out of 1,000 singers that will watch my videos, maybe 5 or 10 might get good. Maybe 1 or 2 might get really, really good. Because it's hard, man. Very, very hard. Anyway, have a great day, guys. I enjoyed this video. I hope you did too. Please comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you again. Bye.